Welcome to Healthcare IT Today. I'm John Lynn, together with my colleague and friend Colin Hung. The world of technology and healthcare ever changing in new and novel ways, and that's why we love this stuff. So join us as we discuss the latest healthcare and health IT news meshed together in new ways, which help generate ideas and new perspectives. Plus, we'll have a little fun along the way. Today, we're going to be doing a ripped from the headlines episode where we're discussing the CrowdStrike outage, ONCs, renaming, Biden and Trump, a little bit of politics there, although more healthcare policy, and then also the Olympics. And be sure to follow the show on social media at the hashtag HITSM and our personal accounts at TechGuy and at Colin_Hung. Plus, check out our 18 years of health IT blog content at healthcareittoday.com. We have to start where we ended, but are you a avid Olympics watcher, or you watch the evening one, or are you like, okay, I'm Canadian, I only watch, well, I was gonna say hockey, but that's the winter.
Winter. I have to say I am a bit of an Olympics junkie, but meaning I get excited when I know it's the year of the Olympics. Like I don't watch like the Worlds or anything like that. But
Yeah.
when the Olympics I know are coming around, I start to get interested. Like, okay, who's going to be in the pool, and are we going to do well in rowing? But yeah, I am a Canadian booster. Other than of course watching the NBA, like the NBA players in the basketball tournaments, because that's kind of fun.
I was
But
gonna say, do you watch mostly Canadian athletes, or yeah, like it's interesting. I've never thought about this because I'm such a, U.S. centric, arrogant, citizen. How is it for Canada? Do you watch everyone or mostly the
yeah,
Canadians?
Yeah, we do. I mean, you do because we don't win as many medals, obviously, as the US or China does. So it is the Canadian networks, they do carry the sports where there are significant, chances for a Canadian medal or a Canadian finish. So we do tend to watch a little bit more of the Canadian sports and things. And so every year it's a little different, right? Because one year we'll have like a shot putter that no one heard about, and all of a sudden they'll be featured, right? And
Wow.
this year, it'll be more like, some other sports. So but I do like watching some of the more interesting ones, like the experimental ones, like the BMX racing, the skateboarding ones, and those are cool.
How about the surfing one in Tahiti? That's fascinating.
That's
Like,
gonna be pretty
wait,
fun.
it's not in Paris, but okay, whatever. I guess it's included. No, it's interesting, especially now. It's all on Peacock, and thanks to the NFL, I purchased Peacock, so I'm ready for the Olympics. So it's a good investment, $20. But it's tough because I want to watch it all. Like, I wish I was a retiree and just watched the Olympics all day, every day. Even just like the, random handball game that's happening between like Yugoslavia, that doesn't even exist, but anyway, Latvia and Italy, right, or whatever. So it's like, but time is, I always feel like I didn't get enough, but I also am like, I'm not going to go back and watch. I like the real time live
Yeah.
feeling of seeing what's happening.
No, it is cool, and Olympics are a lot of fun. But and we'll get to that at the end because we're gonna have a fun time with that topic. But first, our first rip from the headline topic, John, got to talk about the crowd strike downtime. Did we learn anything? What are you feeling? What's your take on that whole thing?
Yeah, and obviously we record these early, so hopefully, we'll see what's changed in the next 2 weeks. I think what's interesting about this one though is that there was a recovery, right? You know what I mean? Like when you deal with ransomware, the response is like, are we going to be able to recover? And there's this like period of time of uncertainty about, are we going to recover? Are we going to pay the ransom? Do we have backups? All this stuff. Whereas this was different because it was just an update that got pushed and they can do another update to fix it. Of course, it caused the blue screen of death, which every tech person has a little bit of PTSD over. We probably need to get some mental health, if, BetterHelp could, do a blue screen of death for tech people, they probably would make a killing. But, like, so we all have that, that experience. But it's interesting how it's lasted longer. I mean, look at Delta, I'm sorry for them and the airlines. It's amazing how broad that is. But they're still suffering with delays and systems having issues. And so, that's I think the interesting part of this is that they've issued an update, but it's still impacting some people. Is that because they can't recover as quickly? That hasn't been as clear to me, how that is. And at the end of the day, it goes back to our previous episode where we said, are these organizations too big? I don't think many people knew CrowdStrike's name. If you ask my wife, she didn't know who CrowdStrike was. And I'm like, well, we did because healthcare knows who CrowdStrike is. IT people do. But most people didn't. And yet it's got a huge impact on the infrastructure of not just healthcare, but a lot of organizations.
Yeah, I think to me the standout difference between this and some of the ransomware attacks is the speed at which the majority of people have recovered from it. Like, yes, there's still some impacts. Yes, there's still some systems down. We're not fully out of the woods yet, but just we're not months. We're not going to be months into this, and people are still be like, man, I'm still recovering from the CrowdStrike outage, right? So that to me is one thing. So credit to them, they got it fixed earlier. But it's really for me what's different about this is how widespread it was and how fast it propagated. Like it didn't take very long for this to start impacting people, airlines, hospitality, everything. Like it was so fast, right? It was like watching a virus in fast forward mode. Um, and then the other part, so that was certainly very interesting, and it certainly highlighted again the interdependencies that we all have and how reliant we are on very few parts of our infrastructure. But I also have to say that the PR recovery has also been equally fast. Like the CEO of CrowdStrike, put out that long letter on LinkedIn and owned up to and said we failed, and all that trust we earned over the years, which I think the quote was, the trust we earned in drips over all these years was lost in bucket loads in a few seconds, when we went down. And so, whether that makes a difference or not, at least someone acknowledged that it was a failure and that they're going to try to, they worked hard to fix it. He thanked the people that did work hard to fix it. And now they're going to spend a lot more time earning back that trust, which they lost, which they acknowledged they lost. So I thought that was kind of like, all right, like okay, you still have a problem, and this should still not have happened, but at least you're owning up to it. You're not blaming someone else, and you're taking it on the chin, and you're gonna move on. So that part of it, I also thought was kind of a bit of a nice part of the recovery.
Yeah. No, I mean, to your first point, there was this great meme that they had with, that said this CISO congratulating the Slacker employee that didn't update, in a timely manner. And you're like, wait, this isn't, I mean, so, I mean, there is this interesting mentality that we had where Windows pushed it, Microsoft pushed it forward that you need to update to be secure. And now we're realizing, well, there are risks to updating quickly as well. The thing that I don't understand, like, and I don't think CrowdStrike is going to explain why this happened. And and this is where I'm not sure it could happen to another organization, although I guess anything could happen. But to a lot more of organizations, it's like this bug was really transparent, right? Like it happened to everyone, right? Like it's not like you miss it, right? Like, and so the question I ask is like, how was this missed in testing? Like it should have happened on hundreds of Windows machines during testing where you're like, oh crap, we're idiots. Let's fix this, right? Like, and so that part I don't know, I don't understand, right? But it does call into questions, for a healthcare organization. Okay, who are your third party vendors and how do they test their product before it goes live? I mean, I've experienced this firsthand when I pushed an update to our EHR and it sucked all the memory out of our server and it did it slowly. It had a memory leak that just slowly did it. So as it went through the day, it would just slow the thing down to a halt where you'd click and wait 30 seconds, a minute. And then, but it happened 5 seconds, then 10, and then, and it just sucked. And then I'm like, oh, great. And they were pointing fingers and all sorts of stuff, right? But anyway, you look at that and you're like, wow, these updates really matter. And it's not too surprising when some healthcare organizations are on Epic 6.0 or whatever number it is, and Epic's released 9.0, right? It's because there's that fear inside of you that says, if I update, what am I going to break? Because I've customized so many things. So that's actually the broader conversation is this whole software updating thing. Am I more secure updating or not? That's causing that question, which isn't a good question to be asked from a security perspective.
No, you're right. I think this is definitely going to put a spotlight, sorry, on an area of software development that doesn't get a lot of spotlight, which is QA, right? Like who did the testing or why wasn't it done? And we don't know, so I'm just speculating. But having gone through this kind of exercise, you kind of get a little cocky, right? Like, because 99% of the time, the testing doesn't reveal anything. Everything's fine. And so you do that enough, you're like, well, that's kind of corner this time and not, not do the testing. Or maybe they've done this a couple of times, who knows? And then you kind of go, well, see, nothing happened. And then you kind of like you just let it go. Like, or meaning the test was still going to happen, but maybe they didn't wait for the full sets of results, or maybe they didn't fully analyze the results from the automated testing. Who knows? But it is very easy to get lulled into that false sense of security, right? Where 99.9% of the time it's fine, nothing ever shows up. So and hey, maybe I don't know what the problem they were addressing, but maybe that was so bad that they really had to get an update out there quick. Otherwise, people were going to be put at risk from a cybersecurity standpoint. So anyway, I do think that is going to highlight, yeah, you know what? Yes, go ahead and send the update, but we're not putting it on our production servers. We're going to put it in test first, and then decide to roll it out into our production environments later on. If once we've had a chance to try it.
Well, and that is the question. If I'm a healthcare organization, should I have tested this update before I pushed it live? And but then you start, this is a challenging problem because they have limited resources. So now am I testing every single update from every single vendor that happens in every, like that's not doable either. So,
No.
you'd have to go back to risk and which ironically, if you did a risk analysis, I'm pretty sure CrowdStrike wouldn't have come up in the risk analysis of one that would take down your EHR or at least access to the EHR is what really happened. They couldn't log into the machine that would access the EHR. And so, like it probably wouldn't have shown up in that risk analysis. So it's a tricky thing. I'm not sure there's, good answers yet, but we'll certainly be diving into it on the CIO podcast. I'll be asking a lot of CIOs, what are you doing?
All right, John, let's get to our second topic. And this is literally ripped from the headlines because this just happened not too long ago. ONC has gone through a little bit of a name change and they've elevated themselves or added the Assistant Secretary for Technology Policy and the Office of the National Coordinator for Health Information Technology. What a mouthful. At least ONC is still in there, but they've renamed themselves. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would actually say this is a really good thing for ONC. It consolidates all the technology, and I'm sure AI is included in this, that was happening at HHS under one assistant secretary. So I think there's going to be some consolidation. What's fascinating is when I went to the ONC conference, I forget the official name of it, in DC this year, when I heard Mickey Tripathy talk about what he's doing and the way he's collaborating with CMS and the way he's collaborating with the other departments within HHS, to me, it felt like he was doing the job before the title change happened because it was such an important thing. And I don't know if that was his own ambition and desire to try to help improve IT at HHS, or if that was the HHS secretary saying, hey, Mickey, we need your help. Could do this? I don't know how it actually played out, but this feels like a change, that was already happening in Mickey's responsibilities at ONC that now is just made official by making him an assistant secretary. There's some other interesting things. I think it makes it ONC more formal part of HHS and the understanding that, hey, technology is going to be an important part of healthcare going forward. So let's make this permanent. Whereas before, ONC kind of had its own budget. It was kind of its own program with its own legislation. And so then there was like, hey, is the funding going to continue? What does this even look like? I think this probably makes it more permanent in my understanding, not a policy expert, but it feels like that's what this is doing as well.
No, the assistant secretary part definitely, I think, has a layer or seal of approval. It certainly has a more seal of authority. So I like that for ONC because I always was a little bit sort of scratching my head, like where does ONC fit? And I think a lot of people had that question. So this, I think, makes it much more clear. And I think in general, yeah, I mean, first of all, I think Mickey has done a great job. I think the ONC has done a great job in general. I mean, they don't have an easy one, so I got to applaud them. And I think, kind of with this expanded role now being official, I think it's a nice fit, right? Now it makes it very nice to all these parts. I think the one thing I would ask is I would ask people is like, what happened to OCR? Like, does OCR fall under this? I mean, it wasn't mentioned, so I'm assuming it's not part of it, but that was the one part I was kind of hoping that would be rolled under and made, much more permanent. Maybe there's other plans, who knows? But that was the one piece I was like, oh, what happens to OCR? There was no mention of that in the announcements.
Yeah, it's a good question. OCR needs some more resources. And, how many of the OCR violations are IT related? I'm guessing a large percentage, right? So that
Right.
would make sense to put them there. Yeah, the other one in my mind, we have an election coming, which we're going to talk about in a minute a little bit, but I wondered if this change kind of firms up some of the positions and some of the roles of ONC to be a little more firm and permanent, regardless of what happens in the election cycle. The ONC, the director of ONC, national coordinator, he was an appointed position. Of course, it's been pretty bipartisan. If there's anything in government that's been bipartisan, technology and healthcare has been one of the most bipartisan things. So maybe that's not a huge issue. But I wonder if this was part of it as well. Is let's firm this up so that the budgets are a little more firm and not as due to the whims of whatever, whoever comes into office in the next political cycle. So, that's a little bit of speculation on my part, but it kind of feels like it makes it a little more firm for the people doing the technology work at ONC.
Yeah, my last comment on this is I'm looking forward to seeing who can come up with the better nickname, right? Like, because this is now a mouthful, and even the short form is not the greatest, right? So I'm looking forward to see what are we going to call this now going forward. What's the short form going to be? So,
Yeah, how
uh,
many times are we going to hear ONC before we hear ASTP or whatever short form you get? If I'm a Vegas guy, I'm saying between now and HIMSS, we're going to probably hear ONC at least 5,000 times at conferences, and ASTP will probably be in the hundreds. So there you
there you
go.
go. I'll take the under on that one for sure.
Okay.
All right. Hey, if you're just tuning in, you're listening to Healthcare IT Today with John Lynn and Colin Hung. Today, we're discussing rip from the headlines. We're taking our topics right from all the things that are happening in the news and having a lot of fun with it. So, John, now we're going to dive into some dangerous territory. We're wading into politics. Well,
You
sort
want
of.
to talk about
But
Trudeau and what he's doing in
yeah,
Canada? Is that
that's too controversial, John. I'm sorry, we
we
can't talk
can't
about
go
that at
there.
all.
Okay,
No,
okay.
yeah, no, no. So with Biden dropping out and with the Trump assassination attempt happening, what's the impact going to be on healthcare and healthcare policy, if any?
I mean, let's look at the debates and the discussions that are happening, the questions that are being asking. How many of them are healthcare related? Now, I haven't watched it too much because it drives me crazy and it's, anyway, whatever. I'll leave my political feelings aside, but I've seen enough of the headlines and things on social media to see that healthcare wasn't a huge topic. It's a little bit of a side talking point. You see them at the extreme ends, where one person's characterized, they're going to take away your Medicare. Not going to happen on either side. Like, that's political fodder, in my opinion. It's someone's trying to do it. But, so you look at it and I'm like, well, the discussion hasn't been healthcare. It's been economy. It's been some national security. It's been, the border. All of those, and probably some that I'm missing, have been bigger issues than healthcare. And a part of that for me is what I heard from some of they did the politics keynote sessions at HIMSS a number of years ago, and I think it was the Republican one that was on there that was talking. He's like, we've never been able to agree on healthcare. And I think that's true, Republican and Democrat. They haven't been able to agree on what to do with healthcare. And there's so many people who are making their money from healthcare that no one wants to take that on. Trump, Biden, Harris, whoever, right? Like none of them want to take it on. So I guess I'm saying I don't think either one will have a huge impact on healthcare.
Yeah, I think, after the election, I think, meaning after whoever wins in November, I don't think healthcare this time around is going to be a big focus for either administration. I think this was unlike what happened before when Trump campaigned on taking down Obamacare, and there was a worry and a concern that it was going to be massive change. Ironically, there was change, but not the massive change that maybe was promised. And I think this time around, either they learned a lesson or they realized that it doesn't maybe make a difference politically what you do with healthcare either way. So I think they're probably going to leave it alone. I think that actually is a good thing for the administrators. And I think for the stability of healthcare, I think that's a good thing that neither party is willing to take on healthcare in this election cycle. What I am interested in, though, and I don't know, is that now that Biden is essentially a lame duck president between now and the end of the year, like, what does that mean for policies that are going to go through? Is he going to like on one hand, is he going to try to solidify his legacy and go push through a lot of things, right? Or is he just going to go, you know what, I don't want to set the boat because that could affect the outcome of November. So I'm just going to sit back and just do, I won't say the minimum, but not take on anything controversial because he doesn't want to influence what's happening in November one way or the other, right? Like that I'm more interested in because we've not had a lame duck president in a while,
Yeah.
right? Like so,
Yeah,
especially
there's
like
been
this,
questions if
right?
you're going to do a bunch of executive orders that are going to impact, I think it'll be interesting to see what he's going to do something, how much in healthcare. I'm not sure, that's not clear to me. It is funny if you look back further, even like Romney, Obama, that was healthcare was a big issue and we would have seen big differences. Like we may not have seen Obamacare if Romney, we would have seen something very different. I just don't see that happening here. The one area that I do think could be interesting is I could see Trump going after pharma. Like there's been some issues with pharma and how much money they're making, and Trump loves to be popular and he loves to go after it. And there's a number of big corporations that are spending a lot of money on pharma. Mark Cuban's obviously been a huge advocate to screw around with pharma because they're costing him so much money. So I wonder in the pharma PBM side of things if Trump could do something. And ironically, since he's already been elected once, he'll be a lame duck president if he gets a second term, and he may not care about certain things that he would cared about in the first term, where he cared a little more about being reelected. So that's the one area I do think could be. I don't think Harris and Biden. We kind of know that I think they're going to have similar policies, on the pharma side of things. Although they've gone after him a bit as well, to some degree. But I wonder, would Trump, kind of square up pharma and say, hey, you're hurting my buddies that are in these big corporations. Let's do something about it. I don't know. I'm not sure, but that's one I would be watching.
Yeah. Well, we're all going to be watching. The whole world are going to be watching in November on that particular race. But let's end talking about races. Let's end by talking about the Olympics. So the Olympics are just around the corner. By the time this airs, it'll probably be half over.
Right
But
at the end, yeah.
um, yeah. So let's talk about the Olympics, but in a more fun sense, John. Like if healthcare had an Olympics, what would some of the games be that you would love to see included in a healthcare Olympics?
So I'm going to steal your favorites to start, which is the patient experience Olympics.
Oh,
How many minutes does it take for you to check in someone and have them fill out the paperwork, right? Like, let's start with the paperwork Olympics, right? And see how quickly that happens, what the experience is like. I think some people would lose. Some would lose really big, so I think that's a challenge there. We could, give a shout out to our medical coders. You could do a coding Olympics, how quickly and accurately can you do the coding of the medical charts. It's going to be interesting. That one's going to be, it's going to be a legacy sport soon because technology is doing a lot of that medical coding. They'll still do the advanced stuff. The medical coders out there, they know that the computers aren't great at that yet, the complex ones. But I mean, it's interesting. It's almost more like a shooting sport, right? The shooting sports where you have to run to a certain area, right? I guess it's more of a winter sport, ski to a one and shoot. It's more like that sport because it's not just how quickly you do it, but it's how accurate
how
you do
accurate.
it. And so it combines those two. Which ones would you add?
Oh man, I'd add a few running ones. So I would do a relay race, but instead of transferring a baton, it would be that you transfer someone's electronic a paper version of a medical record and see how far and then move it around,
How
run
quickly
around the
can you
track.
run their paper record around?
That's right. So everyone's carrying a file folder or multiple file folders, and you have to pass it to the next person. They have to run, pass it to the next person, and not
You could
drop
do an
any.
electronic version. Which one's seen first? A direct message, Tefka message?
A text
Which one's
message or a
best?
fax. Yeah.
Or a fax? Which
No,
one gets seen first and addressed?
so that and I would do the healthcare steeplechase, right? And so you run down a hallway and then you have to like jump over the bed and then you have to go underneath the IV pole and then you have to dodge around the waste bins and then move past the robot that's delivering medications like and so you have a
You have to
race to
grab
go
the
down.
medication out of the secured system
Right.
using your code or a badge. That's going to really
Right.
influence the speed.
Exactly right. So I think there's that. That would be kind of that would be kind of fun to see. I would definitely do the radiology reading sprint,
Ah.
to see who can who could read the radiology, or maybe it's a distance one, see how long it takes you to go through this many, right?
Well,
No AI assistance
I was gonna say,
allowed.
is AI allowed or not?
Nope.
Right? Like
Nope.
that's gonna be controversial.
I'm an
But
athlete. I'm an athlete purist. Like AI is like steroids. You're not allowed. Like that's banned.
yeah, I'm gonna advocate for the use of AI and what can yeah, that's interesting. We have a battle here. The one that I would love to see, this one, I can't believe neither of us said it yet, but I've been saving it for you. This is how long to write the paper chart, versus how long to document. And we're going to have multiple categories, right? There's going to be different divisions that you can do. There's the paper chart, there's the template EHR,
Hmm.
where you use a template, and then there's going to be the ambient voice one, and which one is more accurate and which one can do it quicker, right? And what's interesting is for this sport in the Olympics, you have to wear pajamas because it's called pajama time. So you wear pajamas for all of it to you document.
Like it. I like it. I'm also starting to think about, John, what would be fun to have like a fax shot put, right? Like just taking the fax machine from the back of the office and see how far you can throw it.
who can who can shot put the fax? It's more of a discus, though. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, yeah.
Maybe
Let's
more
see.
of a disc, maybe more like a hammer throw, I guess. But
Yeah, can we tie it up and do that?
or then maybe, John, maybe we have powerlifting, depending on how much weight of the medical files, right? Like you just how much can you power lift it or not, and all those. Although
Who
you
can
have to think
hold
about
their
something in the pool.
laptop, their laptop the longest while doing rounds, right? That's the marathon version is who can walk around holding the laptop. If it falls, you get a penalty, just like the walking one where if your foot comes off the ground, then you get a penalty. Yeah, that's
Well, I got to think, what would be the synchronized swimming equivalent in healthcare, right? Like try to get everyone to move at the same pace or the same way
oh,
while
so you
half
got to
underwater.
it's a team sport. That's what it is. You have the nurse, you have the doctor, you have the front desk. So, it's a full, visit, including the front desk, medical records. So that, I don't know, but it's interesting. Would you have a pentathlon for that as well? So the individual could do it or the team could do it and see, it's not quite synchronized swimming, although you could have an exam room synchronized between the nurse and doctor. That synchro would be pretty interesting to watch.
So I think what we're gonna do now, this deserves a YouTube. We're gonna have to figure out a way to put this out there to see how we can create some healthcare Olympic games.
Yeah, it feels like a ZDog MD video back in the day, right? Where you did it, but this is actually a good idea. I mean, it's interesting. Would different countries have different problems, right? Because so if you go from the US, then you have to document more billing. Whereas, if you're in other countries that have just single payer, the billing codes are different, and I guess you get a little advantage. So, the US would need to reform their system
Well,
to compete in the healthcare Olympics.
well, I definitely think the Canadians would win anything to do with fax then, because we're still running on that. We'd probably do pretty well on the paper record version because there's still a lot of organizations up here still able and capable of using paper.
Well, I'm sure we'll see some other stories coming out of the Olympics. I wonder how many paper records are being used at the Olympics to document the athletes, but it's
Probably.
always an interesting story.
Well, hey, thanks to all of you who tuned into this episode of Healthcare IT Today. You can find out more details about our show by checking out the programs page on healthcarenowradio.com. And please share your voice and engage with the community on healthcareittoday.com and on social media using the hashtag HITSM. I'm Colin Hung, along with my friend and Health IT collaborator, John Lynn. Thanks for listening and have a great week.